Welcome to our 2020 year in review show here on the Terry McGriff Show. Once again, blessed and privileged to have my co-host, the illustrious Andre L. Sullivan, sitting right there in those snuggly iHeartRadio studios there, man. How's it going, my brother?
It's good. I'm still waiting on Santa to bring me my Bugatti, but I'm gonna just see if I can hold off till 2021. But how you doing, Coach?
Oh man, let me tell you, everything is going wonderfully right now. My one thing that I need to take care of for myself is make sure I get me a ticket for tonight and tomorrow night for those doggone Powerballs and stuff like that. I heard they were pretty big, so I think I'm going to go ahead and try my luck at that. hopefully, hopefully I'll be one of the time. Oh, he got it on the first shot, 1 kill on that one. Okay, that'll be me. That'll work. And then we'll take us a nice cruise. We might have to do this year, all the rest of the shows for 2021 on location.
Okay.
But man, we've come into the end of can I say, just fantastically, but awful, crazy year. I mean, it's been a little bit of everything. Some stuff that we never thought coming, and then just some outstanding stuff also in this year. So we're gonna talk about this year on this episode as we close it out, and this will be our last one for this year. I mean, we've all had some stuff, ups and downs. I know we've known people who've had some trials and tribulations in this year. We've lost some family members, we've lost some friends, and we've handled some subjects that we didn't think we'd get to handle, and things have came around this year that's just made this one of the years to start this decade off was like with a bang, if you want to put it that way. It's definitely hadn't started the 20s of the 2000s on a down note. It just came on with a bang. That's the best way I'll say it. So what we're going to talk about how 2020 has been, COVID-19. Has it been the biggest villain in sports? I give COVID-19 credit with running roughshod through the entire world of sports, not just our world in general, but in the world of sports. The next thing we're going to really kind of talk about the college football playoffs. We're going to just kind of finish that out because we're going into 2021, because that game will be actually played in 2021, those two college playoff games. Then we're going to also talk about race relationships for 2020. How was that actually really addressed in sports, and how well we think that those athletes and people in sports handled the issue of race and discrimination, and obviously the racial injustice and things that are going on. And lastly, we're gonna give our predictions and things that we might think as we'll see in 2021 as we go through, as we end off this year. So let's get started with it, man. Let's get started. Like we said, COVID-19, it has been, I've heard COVID called all kind of names, man. From the MF word to, oh my God, it's been the reincarnation of the devil himself. But COVID has really affected the sports world unlike any other, in good and in bad. The reason I would say in some good, because as we'll talk later in the show, because we didn't have sports, it allowed us to address some issues that probably would not have been addressed if we'd have had sports as normal. So that's the one, if I'm going to give it anything good that came out of that, was that. Man, how it has ran roughshod on every aspect of sports. First of all, let's say, has COVID robbed people? Yes, it's robbed people of opportunities. It's robbed people of life. First of all, it's robbed people of money. I mean, how many businesses, and far as just sports, we're not even going to talk about normal business, just sports alone. How many businesses been affected outside of the sports? Just the people that are around these different stadiums that depend on these fans and depend on merchandise and then depend on any and everything that has to do with their team or their sport, how COVID has really ran roughshod and robbed people. And I want to get your take on it. And I'll stop my little rant right here.
No, you said it best. It robbed people. And speaking on sports in particular, we saw how much sports affects culture with this year, and with us missing a lot, and of course here in the United States, of course, not disregarding any other country, but here in the United States, where we have the big three being football, basketball, and baseball. We saw what happens when those three entities for human consumption is not there. It allows a lot of free time to do other things. And as we'll get into later. But I think COVID, I won't say COVID was the biggest villain.
Wow.
If anything, I can, and hear me out. I won't say COVID is the biggest villain to sports. I think what COVID did was unmask a lot of things that sports and the watching of sports allowed for it to hide. A lot of, we saw with the NFL in particular this year of how unorganized they were as far as when it came to operations. And so, had COVID not happened, we might not have been able to see how well they can deal with game plans. We talk about the NBA COVID, it basically took a check away from a lot of different teams. And the NBA in particular and baseball has this problem as well, where they don't have a salary cap, they have a luxury tax. And so imagine being a basketball player who is kind of accustomed to a certain lifestyle, if you will, but basically saying this game check that you're used to getting, your team sucks. You're not playing. You don't have a real chance to play for a playoff, so you're going to sit home for 30, 20 to 30 games. And it took a hit, and of course, COVID it hit the bottom line. A lot of pockets got hurt, mine included. So I can't say was the biggest villain. Obviously, I always stand by. Humans are the biggest villains to anything that human creates. But COVID this year in 2020 definitely allowed the revealing of a lot of things, and its effect will obviously be felt long past when the clock strikes midnight this Friday. Mm-hmm. And so we will feel the effects of COVID for at least 5 to 10 years. And moreover, we'll feel the effects of sports for at least 10 to 20 years. Just mm-hmm. because, it now changed the way we view venues and the consumption of fans. It now changed the way we do operations and how we handle certain items in clothing and cleaning. It changed the way of how we cover sports. Us in sports media, if there's no sports to cover in sports media, you don't have a job. And so, speaking from experience, so I think this year, COVID, like I said, I can't say COVID was the biggest villain, but if we're ranking it, it'd probably be like that the villain's assistant, because good God, it did some damage.
Mm-hmm. I tell you what, and like me personally, like I said, with the Women's Tackle Football League, a lot of the other minor sports, minor league baseball, which completely shut their doors. You're talking about people that normally needing access to other people's facilities, having to try to rent facilities totally closed. Different states totally shut the sports down. I mean, just think about California, the Pac-12, and all the teams out west were the last ones to even try to play college football. I mean, let's go with the March Madness. We didn't have one. We were robbed of March Madness by COVID. There's one robbery right there. We were robbed of some of the great golf classics. Jacksonville here. We were robbed of the TPC. I mean, we were robbed of seeing the Masters in its normal time. They did end up playing it, but later on, but it wasn't the same when you used to seeing it at a certain time. Sports has this type of routine with the calendar that everybody's used to. Okay, on this date I'll be here to do this. On that date I'll be there to do that. And we were robbed of routine, if you want to put it in one say. We were robbed of our sports routine. People were normally plan their vacations around certain things, and so you're talking about it was taken. We were robbed of the Olympics. They're going to replay it here in 2021, so we hope. But the Olympics, where you normally got to meet that person, that anonymous athlete that you never hear about, but except for those every 4 years that they come and you get to learn about their story and you get to kind of fall in love with who they are and their story. We were robbed of that, and so there's a lot of people that, especially if it was that athlete that was just trying to make that last ditch attempt to make that last Olympics, and he knew he was going to be too old. Was he robbed of that opportunity? Now, will he be able to make that team again and get his Olympic experience, or was he robbed of it because he's now aged himself out of being able to be a competitive athlete in the Olympics? The other thing I could say we were robbed of a lot of money as far as charitable things that people would normally give to sports. I mean, you think about the youth sports that were normally being running this time of year. How many of those people, the kids had to shut down because of things that they couldn't do? How many high schools across the country, because their states didn't play? You got a lot of kids robbed of scholarship opportunities because they didn't get a chance to play high school in their senior year, or even worse, maybe not worse, but the juniors that would have been juniors this year, now they got to start over as a senior coming into next year without having that tape to get them to let everybody knows, okay, this is the guy that's a rising senior. So you're going to have a whole bunch of people. Not to mention, college football is letting most of those guys return that wants to return, so they don't lose their eligibility. So where are those kids that were looking to come out now? What scholarships going to be available to, or are there going to even be any spots open for them to play in college? It's definitely going to be less, because there's going to be some people that's going to decide to stay in college and take that extra year eligibility. And so this young hotshot freshman is not going to get a scholarship, may not even get a walk-on spot. So a lot of people has been harmed, not just immediately, but down the line. How much, like you said, how long is the lingering effects of this COVID is going to affect us going forward? And only time will tell. But it's going to be an interesting watch as we go forward with that. I'd like to tell you one thing, because one of the things that once it could affect us is like one of our sponsors. I'd just like to mention our great sponsors of Team Sports for the Rec. You see them right here on my chest here, and we got Watch Game Film and She-Car, great companies. They are all affected, especially Watch Game Film. Probably one of the, if you haven't heard of them, they're the major competition to Huddle, and they're much better, in my opinion, for certain things that they do, and they're definitely more affordable. And you're talking about there's no need to use a film sharing company if there's no game film to share. So there's people that were really affected by that. So it's one of the things that we have to say, another robbery of COVID, and we'll see how people, because you're not going to get that money back. That revenue is gone forever. Them paychecks are gone forever. Ain't that right, Andre? Those those sponsorship dollars and those sponsorship opportunities are gone forever. Those girls and those guys and those kids that got a chance to have those experiences never got those things. We'll never get those. You never know how the lingering effects of this will happen. So what we're going to do now, we're going to run and go into our next topic of race relationships. Another reason, as we're talking about how COVID has affected things, the one good thing, like we said before, because of the lack of sports, and we got the exposure to let people to really get a chance to see some of the real social injustices that these athletes have been speaking on and speaking about, but being ignored for years. What Colin Kaepernick paid an ultimate career price on, you know, by standing up for. And people finally, because of the lack of sports and the lack of focus on sports, got to really push that subject to the spotlight, to the top of the priority chain. And then what's even better about it, the athletes as a group, black, white, whatever, Klingon, I don't care. People of all races, creeds, colors started speaking out what everybody knows to be the wrong. And hopefully, this thing has been addressed. Do I think it's been properly addressed? No, because I still have yet to see a bill. I've still yet to see anything written into law, anything proposed that will make sure that everybody is treated equally. And also, I still see people having resistance to it with their attitudes to understand that that people are all the same. People, judge people by their character, not by their color, not by their race, not by their, who they love. These things need to be changed. You know what I mean? So we will see as we've gotten back into sports, a lot of that talk that was kind of wired down. You still see the mementos on the helmets or the uniforms and stuff, but there's not a lot of post game speeches being spoken now. There's not a lot of, hey, sitting on the sideline and talking about this. Everything's now, it's kind of way back into the background again. And that's the thing that's starting to concern me, because we're starting to get sports. People are going to go back into the old routine, and those criminals who like murdering people legally, because it's not the police, in my opinion. It's those guys who have side agendas that wear those uniforms that are the enemy of the American people and all people.
Well, let me debunk a couple of things. One, if you remember the movie The Matrix,
Of course.
the second Matrix Revolution, that's my favorite one out of the three. And the reason why it's my favorite one out of the three is really based on this one scene where Neo meets the architect, if you will, and he has this very, very, very unnecessary long monologue. But in the midst of that monologue, he says the biggest issue that you humans face is choice. And that line right there, I don't even think they probably knew it because, the Wachowski brothers wrote it, but that was one of the most powerful lines I thought ever in movie cinema, because I was like, yeah, that makes so much sense. And then we go to this year in 2020 with everything that's happening. And I think things will not be addressed because I don't think they can be addressed. And here's my reasoning behind that. I think, and America's made this, and I think this is why you won't see a bill. This is why you won't see a law into effect with certain things, because it's hard to pass a law or get legislation going that can control morality. They tried that with the no drinking that bill when they banned liquor, and when that happened, what happened? We got speakeasies and things like that. They tried the they've been trying for forever, to ban drugs, and we see the effects of how that worked out, and not to put light and put all of those things in the same box, but I use those as examples is legislation, laws, bills, things of that nature can never control morality, And then that goes back to what I said about the Matrix movie, and the line from the Matrix is the biggest flaw that we face as humanity is choice. Because when we think about a child, they don't come out the womb prejudiced. They don't come out the womb racist. And so if you put a white kid, a Hispanic child, a black child, an Asian child in a sandbox, eventually they're going to find a way to play with each other. And then when they get 10, 15, 20 years older and you put them back in that sandbox, they're going to find a way to not like each other. And that's where we are as a world. Now, yes, there's over systematic injustice that can be addressed. The issue is none of these things will be addressed on a court. When I say court, I mean basketball court. None of these things will be addressed on a football field or a baseball diamond or a soccer field. And can they be brought to the light in those platforms? Absolutely. That's what we're seeing our athletes doing. That's what we see people like LeBron doing. That's what we see Russell Wilson has spoke about, those things a lot. A lot of different athletes using their platform. But if you go on Wikipedia, you go on Google, and you look up the definition of an athlete, it'll give you the definition of, that person plays sports, blah, 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 blah. And then you go on those same websites and look up the definition of a lawyer, and it'll give you the definition of a lawyer. And in those definitions is the reason why those people can't change those things. And I think we're at a place now. Have those things been changed? Absolutely not. They're not going to. And I don't think sports stops that. But what sports did do was allow the conversation to be continued when the game came back on. And so, are those things being addressed? No, they're not being addressed, because we as a people, and I don't just mean black people, I don't mean white people, I mean we as a people haven't gotten to the point where we're fed up about it. And we saw that, we had a whole presidential election. We still did not have 100% participation in it. And we, here in our great city of Jacksonville, Florida, we just, if you voted, you saw, and you turned the paper over, you saw 3 different laws that went into effect that could affect you in your own neighborhood. And we still didn't have 100% voting participation in that. And so I get it, to a certain point, it's wrong. Absolutely wrong. I don't think me and you will ever disagree on or get into a battle where it's like, hey, racism is totally cool,
Yeah.
I'm never going to get into that.
I got you there.
but my point that I'm trying to make is LeBron can't stand before the judicial court, the 13th judicial court or the Western judicial court and say, hey, let's put into a law that this needs to be changed. Russell Wilson, Leonard Fournette, Jalen Ramsey can't stand in front of the president and say, "Hey, I would like for this to go," and then he go actually do it. And you or I can't go in front of XYZ lawmaker or Senate or congressman or congresswoman and say, "Hey, this needs to happen and change." And then they go do it. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. It's never going to work like that. But when we have, I feel like we're getting to the point where people are fed up. I think we've gotten to the point where people are fed up. We saw that with the looting and rioting that happened over the summer when sports wasn't happening. Then sports came back. It didn't go away. What it did was the cameras just changed directions.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're at the point where if you want something to change, you're going to have to be the catalyst that helps change it. And so I'll never get mad at sports for an athlete for not using their platform for this change, because that's, once again, if you look up the definition of athlete, that's not in their job description. Mm-hmm. And I can't be mad at them for that morality choice that they've made.
Mm-hmm.
If someone makes that choice, I clap it up for you, and I give you all the praise. Colin Kaepernick made that choice. We saw what he paid for, as you alluded to earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But we're now at the point where if an athlete wants to use their platform to help push the narrative, that's what they're going to do. If they don't, cool, because that's not their job. It's our job as citizens to go out and vote and try to change. It's our jobs as citizens to ask our aldermen, our senators, our congressmen, our representatives to do their job. It's not the athlete's job. The athlete's job is to catch the ball, dunk the ball, kick the ball. You know what I mean? And so I'll never go out and say, hey, my favorite player didn't do this and they not for the cause, they not woke or whatever. No, that's not their job. Their job is to kick the ball, play the ball, throw the ball, shoot the ball. That's their job. And so the point that I'm trying to make in this very long rant that I'm going on is that we're now at the point where if you want it to change it or shut up.
I like that. That's what it is right there. It's either put up or shut up on that. That's perfectly said. And I want to end this part of the conversation, end this part of this topic by saying the fact that we got the attention at an unprecedented level was the thing that we really needed. Now, can we continue to capitalize on it? Can we continue the work that needs to be done and doing it and keep our eye on the ball, and especially now that you have all races that are seeming to be working together with this. So if it doesn't go through this time, it's because people decided that, okay, it's not important enough. And I'm like Forrest Gump said, that's all I'm gonna say about that. But I do want to mention one thing before we switch over that. When you're talking about The Matrix, I do agree with you. The Matrix has some of the greatest scenes in all three of those movies. Like I always remember the part in the first Matrix where the young kid was with Neo, and the one thing he told Neo, one thing you got to remember is there is no spoon. So going on to that, let's talk about a little bit of college football playoffs here. We spoke on it a little bit last week when we're talking about who deserves to be in and why they're in and whatnot. Let's talk about the matchups this week. Let's just get down to the nitty gritty on this thing. Who gonna be whose butt? Who's gonna get there? Because there's four teams in this. Two we figured out we know that deserves to be in there. The other two is questionable. We're not gonna go into that. We leave that for last week's show. But having said that, I'm predicting the two teams that belong in this playoffs, that no doubt that they belong in this playoffs, I'm gonna be meeting for the championship. Now, my personal thing, I'm an SEC guy, but I'm kind of switching up I'm predicting that first of all, that Alabama just totally embarrasses Notre Dame. I really don't see this game being even watchable after halftime. I mean, the way Clemson went through them like a hot knife through butter, Alabama's offensive line is probably 3 times Clemson's offensive line. Alabama has a better defense. Overall, the passing game for Alabama, they're the number one scoring offense in the nation right now. I don't see, unless Alabama has one of their once every other year classic slip-up games like they're playing Ole Miss and just make a ton of mistakes, I don't see Notre Dame even being competitive past halfway through the second quarter. If they are, that's great for the viewing audience, but I'm not predicting that. Secondly, let's talk facts here. This is it's the number 1 versus the number 2 bowl as far as draft prospects. Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence. Us here, we want to get our last couple of glimpses at Trevor Lawrence here in Jacksonville to see, what we got coming. Should they don't do the stupid thing and not they do the right thing, because we know they're going to draft that kid. Anyway, the game last year was competitive. I give it that. Justin Fields made some critical mistakes that cost him the game, but also we got to see some stuff that we didn't see out of Trevor Lawrence. Because first of all, I knew the kid was kind of athletic, but I didn't know he had that kind of speed. When he had a 63-yard touchdown run against Ohio State last year in the playoffs, the kid showed some speed. I didn't know he had those kind of wheels, so that's a good thing. We're going to see, who's really wanting it, because obviously Dabo Swinney has come out and openly said, first of all, what he thought of Ohio State. He thought Ohio State should probably be ranked 11th in the country. Secondly, he considers Ohio State a rival, even though they're not in the same conference. He spoke on how they basically are recruiting the same type of kids, and they do recruit against the same schools and things of that nature. And they play each other on an annual enough basis now with playoffs and stuff that they consider them a rivalry. So whatever uniform it is, it's going to be the Clemson's all weather. It's going to either be their all orange or it's going to be their all white, whatever. But they're going to wear their big game uniform for this game, and Ohio State will do what they do. I just haven't seen enough great tape on Ohio State to believe that they're going to get past Clemson. I also think that Clemson is going to pretty much do everything in their power to shut down Sermon and make sure that Justin Fields is the one that beats him. And unless Ohio State has been sandbagging with their receiving core, I don't see they have anything outside of their top wide receiver. They might have some. I'm sure they got athletes all over the field. I'm sure they got 4- and 5-star recruits. We just don't know about them. So maybe one of those guys will have a step up and have a big game. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to have some. You're going to have some play from guys that you normally didn't hear about in the 5-6 games that they played this year to get a gauge on them. And I really don't have enough film to having a belief that they're going to have enough cohesion on the offensive line and offensively to score enough to keep up with Clemson. And so I'm predicting Clemson to play Alabama for the national title. This is where I kind of find the dilemma is, because I don't know what to think. I mean, my gut says Alabama's going to win the whole thing. I'm looking at those possibly 3 first-round picks on the offensive line. The first-round pick wide receiver, the first-round pick tailback, possibly first-round pick quarterback. I still haven't. I think Mac Jones is really good. He developed into a really, really, really good college quarterback. I don't know what his projection is going into the NFL, especially with the new age of quarterback we have. So I'm going to predict Alabama, but it wouldn't bother me to see Clemson win. But I kind of like to see Trevor Lawrence come to Jacksonville with 2 natties in his bag and only 1 loss in his college career.
Okay. Here's the thing. A lot of what you said was really good. I had an issue with 2 things in particular.
Mm-hmm.
One, you opened the conversation where it said, "Let's talk facts." A lot of that was opinion. But and so
they're my facts.
Huh?
They're my facts.
Yeah, I agree. They are. So here's the thing. I agree. I think the Notre Dame versus Alabama game will be closer than you think. And the reason being is that
it's going to be 45 minutes long game. It's going to last about an hour and 10 minutes because it'll be over that quickly.
No, I think it's going to be closer than you think. And the reason being is that if we give Brian Kelly enough time, I think he puts together a game plan that can at least hold Alabama up. Is it going to stop Alabama? No. I don't think it stops Alabama. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be closer than you think. I agree Alabama's going to win that game. But if we saw Alabama in the 4th quarter versus the University of Florida in the SEC championship, if anything gets close to that, I think it's the way Brian Kelly coaches the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And so, no, they're not going to stop them. I'm not saying that. All of our viewers, please don't hit me up saying, "Oh my God, you predicted Alabama to lose." No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's going to be a closer game than what people are giving. Now, on the other side of that, the last time Clemson and Ohio State picked or were chosen to play, I actually picked Ohio State over Clemson. And the reason being is that outside of Notre Dame, maybe a better coached Texas A&M team, who has Clemson played this year that gave them any type of try? And they now have a healthy Trevor Lawrence. Him getting hurt wouldn't be the worst thing in my book. A healthy Trevor Lawrence, barring any COVID interruptions. A healthy Clemson offense. They have not seen a team yet that's given them any troubles. And we saw what happened when they did have a team that, when Trevor Lawrence wasn't there, and when they didn't have to put in a different quarterback, we saw what happened. They got beat by Notre Dame. I think we don't give enough credit to this Ohio State team. And I get it. They only played 6 games. I get that. And they played in a very, very hurt Big Ten conference. I understand all of those dynamics. But don't count this team out. And that's why I can't predict who wins this game. Because as we say all the time, and coach to coach here, you never give a team bulletin board material. And granted, none of that extra motivation can affect how a player plays. You still got to go out there and play the game. But when you give a team bulletin board material, and you have individuals on your team who are trying to make a statement, that you don't account for those intangibles of how pissed off a person is until they hit you. And I think, granted, Dabo Swinney is one of the best coaches in college football right now. Bar none, maybe Nick Saban is above him, but Dabo Swinney right now is the person, if I had to pick to pull to my school, it would be him. Mm-hmm. And so, but at the end of the day, you don't poke a giant and expect them to just keep being okay with it. And, literally since the selection committee announced who would be in the playoffs, that's what Dabo has done. Saying XYZ, Ohio State doesn't deserve to be here. Ohio State doesn't do this. Ohio State this, blah, 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 blah. And everything he's saying, like yourself, was his facts. But the only fact that stands is, come Friday at 8 p.m., you got to lace up in the Sugar Bowl and play Ohio State. That's the only fact. Everything else has yet to be determined. And everything else is still opinion. And so I can't predict the winner of this game yet because I don't know. Like I said, outside of maybe Notre Dame, outside of them playing a Texas A&M team, Clemson hasn't seen anyone. They don't go through that harsh SEC schedule that Alabama has to go through. That's why if you notice, you never try the big kid on the playground because the big kid that had some fights before. And that big kid got a mama at home who slap him up. So if you try the big kid, he ready to let all that aggression out of him. We don't try Alabama. Clemson's the little brother who all he does is play his video games, talk trash on social media, and he can play good, but he hasn't played anybody yet. And that's where I see Clemson as right now. I don't take for granted everything that Clemson has done. I don't take for granted who Trevor Lawrence is. I don't take for granted who Travis Etienne is coming out of the backfield and outside. But I will say, don't look for this to be a blowout. And I'll go as far as to say, come the fourth quarter, if there's 5 minutes left and the winner hasn't been decided, don't be surprised at the outcome.
Okay. I get it. Like I said, from the body of work that I say, that's why I make my prediction. I mean, if you give Indiana 5 more minutes on that clock, Ohio State's not playing in this game. It's probably Indiana.
That's great, but here's the logic. Here's the problem with that statement. There's 60 minutes on the clock at the beginning of every game.
I totally get it. I totally get it. And that's my point. You had 60. You had 60 minutes. First of all, this is my issue with them. You run your mouth at the beginning of the season. Why you won't let us play? Blah 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 blah. Then half, like we're gonna go back to I'll go back in the rant. Then half of you end up quitting at the end of the season with COVID and making all kind of excuses. You got grandfathered into a game that you really didn't earn because you went by your own rules and your conference didn't even follow the rules you set. You know what I mean? So they're used to being given certain things. They're used to being because they Ohio State and they play in the horseshoe. And do they have great coaches, players, all that? Yes, they do. They can line up and play with anybody. That's not my point at all. My point is that in a season like this, where you had so many distractions, you had so many things that go against you, the one thing that helps you win football games, and by coaching, especially now, is cohesion. And they don't have it as much as Clemson does. And when things start going bad, and they will, that's when you need that cohesion to be able to stick together. And the body of work that I've seen with Ohio State is they were in the same kind of boat that Clemson was. They didn't have a lot of challenges, but the time that they did have a challenge, they almost buckled under that challenge. And they were basically spotted by a team who made a ton of mistakes and still barely hung on and still barely lost to them. And they're not a football power. So everybody usually gets that game where they have that bad game, and sometimes they slip out of it and sometimes they don't. Like Florida didn't have a chance. They didn't slip out of their LSU bad game. They didn't slip out of their Texas A&M bad game. You know what I mean? I think most of these really good teams slip out of those games and found a way to get through it. This is the game that Ohio State doesn't get through because they're not placing they're not paying a team that's beneath their level. And their consistency enough, even in the games that they blew out, wasn't enough, in my opinion, by watching them to say that they're going to. And it's just not like we got a normal 25, 30-day get ready. Let's everybody go back and go break down the basics and go through that. No, this is basically just another game on the calendar with a bye week in between. You don't have all that extra time to throw a whole bunch of new stuff that people hadn't seen all year long, even though they do because they only played 5 games. So they probably got stuff in the back of the playbook that hadn't run yet. But it's still in their plethora. It's still, you can go back and research some of the stuff that they've done. So you can find some formation identifications if you study, if your coaching staff and your guys study hard enough. You can recognize something out there that you didn't see on the field. Hey, wait a minute, we ain't seen this formation in these 5 games. So here comes something that we haven't seen before. So I get that. So in either way, we made our bones with what that is, and so we're gonna stand there. We'll see what happened on our New Year's show. We come back next Tuesday to record this show and find out who did what, because we both could be wrong. It could be Ohio State playing Notre Dame, and wouldn't that be a topic of discussion? So we will find out in the new year, and we're gonna go with that. Now let's finish off this show by making some predictions based off of what we've seen so far going to finishing out this year. I would like to start off by saying that we're gonna have some exciting football, even more exciting football, and some exciting plays with the teams that are kicking off at the beginning of this new year to finish their seasons that we didn't have. We're going to have some players that we normally would not have seen or got to know because of the situation. It would have been normal. This year, we're going to find some new darlings that play in this quasi-spring, late fall football with the HBCUs, some of the FBS teams playing. And it ought to be some interesting watches. The one last thing I would like to say is going back to in our year review. The one good thing I do like to take that COVID did, we got to see a lot of football. We got to see dang there days where we got football every day of the week. So if you're a diehard football, want to just watch football, don't care who it is, just give me a beer and let me watch some football. This was your year, So whatever you lacked at the beginning, from April through July, you made up for it in football. You got to see some football. You was not robbed of your football experience between 2019 and 2021. You're going to get to see probably more football than you've seen in your life in a calendar year, 12-month calendar year. And so that's been the great thing that COVID has provided. So if you're a person who just want to be a armchair football scout and watch a bunch of people that you never heard of and just to see what they might do, this has been your year because you got to watch football every day, including this week. There's football games going on, obviously, all this week because of the bowl games, all the way up through the playoffs. A lot of good, professional football, especially this weekend. Some great performances. We didn't get into that. I'd like to give a shout out to Alvin Kamara on Christmas Day for that great 6-touchdown performance. That was just amazing to see him in that offensive line play. We got to see this year was a lot of changes, changing of the guard, Buffalo now taking over for in the AFC East, New England taking that slide after the beatdown last night that they kind of put on. And I think they did a little bit extra scoring just to prove a point, the changing of the guard really with the extra playoff seeding. This you're going to have in 7 seeds now, and now everything. It's almost like you're getting this last week is the playoffs because you got damn near everybody in the NFC East is winning, you're in, or losing, you go home. With the exception of the Philadelphia Eagles, you got Green Bay and Chicago still trying to get it. You got in the AFC, you got the Colts and the Titans still fighting for the division or might be out of the playoffs. It seemed like everybody with the exception of Cincinnati in the NFC North is alive. And so it's been a really fun year for us. That you got to see some young guys that you wasn't expecting to do much come out of the woodwork. A lot of guys that we didn't know at all. Now we know them. So, like I said, with all the football, COVID has been done great for football for us, the football fan, being able to catch up on a lot of stuff that they didn't see. So I'm predicting more of that. That's one of my predictions. I'm predicting that because this Olympic year was moved back a year, that we're going to get some even really dramatic stories that, if God willing, that they have the Olympics. And it's probably going to be one of the biggest years for Olympics that we've seen in probably a few decades, where people want to see who's going with these Olympics and who's the new gymnast, or who's the somebody out like wrestling, or somebody that we never heard of in some odd not well-known sport. So that's my predictions this year for 2021. I also predict that far as women's tackle football is going to be a fantastic year. You're going to have a lot of new things come out with that. And like I said, I'd like to shout out to all my guys with Laces Out too. Also, Mike Hollis, Todd Covington, Nick Gatto, all the guys, all the cast and crew there, and you helping us out with this. So, man, that's my predictions. I think it's going to be a fantastic year. Hopefully the vaccine helps and we can kind of normalize where people can go back into the venues. And I that's the other last thing I will say. More and more people will start attending those games next year than they were this year. If it's not full stadiums, it'll at least be half full next year.
Okay. So a quick review. Like you said earlier, COVID, it took his hit with 2020 that no one could see coming. I mean, maybe besides Trump, I don't know. But yeah, a lot of things happen. A quick little shout out to the my alma mater, Jacksonville University's women's basketball team. 6 of their players, whether it be COVID, eligibility, or whatever have you, can't play this season.
Wow.
So they literally went and got 5 players, 5 young women from other sports at JU, and are now playing NCAA basketball.
Wow.
And so, like, I have to shout out. So Casey Stevens, who was a lacrosse player, is now playing power forward. Rena Mitchell, who was a volleyball player, a sand volleyball player, now plays point guard. Logan Gonzalez, who was a soccer player, now plays at 3 and 4. Haley Holloway, who played softball, now plays at 4 and 5. And Melanie Carter, who was a rower, now plays point for
You talking about like row on the boat out there? Oh my goodness!
Yeah. And so it's a story that hasn't gotten a lot of light, but literally, if they go far, like I'm expecting Coach Haney to do with those young ladies, it'll be an interesting story to tell. So I got to give them a shout out. I had to do that to anyone else. Yeah, so those ladies, Coach Haney over there at Jacksonville University. But we saw a lot. So my predictions, like I just gave you that story with JU women's basketball team. We're probably going to see a lot more of that happening with sports. Some people who've never touched a field, diamond, court, sand, whatever you
started with the Vanderbilt young lady.
Due to COVID, don't throw away your shot, as they said in Alexander Hamilton. This your chance, and my prediction, we're gonna see a lot more of that in 2021, even when COVID is over. You're gonna probably give that one, outrageous thing that you never thought you've done. You're probably gonna get a chance to do it, and so like those 5 young ladies now getting to play NCAA basketball. One of them in particular never touched a basketball before. And last night she went 13, put up 13 points.
Wow!
So, yeah,
in a Division I college basketball game.
Yeah, so we're going to see a lot more of that happening this year. Another thing we're going to see, football in this year took a hit. I think now more than ever, we appreciate the role of the backup. And I don't think we truly appreciated it like we have in the past until this year. Example, this Sunday NFL game, the Arizona Cardinals played the Los Angeles Rams, and you're going to have 2 starting quarterbacks you've never heard of. I can't even quote them.
One's from Jacksonville.
I can't even quote their names. My point is, I didn't know you were from Duval, bro.
Yep. From Bishop Kenny.
Good luck to you. My point exactly. And in 21, we're the backup role for anybody, especially the backup quarterback role, will probably become the most important role in college football and the backup role in sports in general. I think like with Clemson, they underestimated how Trevor was invincible, but COVID got him. Sorry, and then you lost the game in Notre Dame. And not to say that other young man wasn't capable of doing a job, but I'm overly sure Dabo Swinney wasn't giving him the reps that he needed to probably prepare for a team like Notre Dame. And in fact, so we'll see the role of the backup get its due. And my last prediction, and this is the bold prediction, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see it. Watch and wait. For the first time in a long time, we will see the team with the number 1 draft pick trade down.
Ooh.
And,
okay, then. You trying to break some waves right there.
And listen, hey, quote me on it. I don't care. I said it. Said it with my chest. But yeah, man, listen. And I won't be surprised if we see that. Just because when you don't know who's driving the boat, you can end up at any location. And when you don't know who's driving the car, ain't no telling what you're going to do. You might be going for a highway robbery, and you can jump in that car. So but that's where the Jacksonville Jaguars stand right now, with a leaderless in their front office. So, I would not be surprised if we saw the number 1 pick traded to somebody else just because it's the Jaguars. In my last prediction, we will see the most people of color in front office jobs in 2021. And
I'll agree with that.
And I can't give that feat to happenstance. It's been coming for a long, long time. And it's going to go to those who put in the work and had the due diligence to keep trucking on.
Yeah, this won't be a political hire. This is going to be these people earned it.
This is not this for the first time won't be because we're trying to shut the other side up. This
Mhm.
is because those men and women have earned those positions. And so kudos to whoever that is. I hope I just put a blessing on somebody, but kudos to whoever that is because I definitely see that happening in 2021.
I will make one more prediction just to on basically on the back of that. There will be more and more higher end high school football, basketball, and other athletes choosing the HBCU route, like had already started with Jackson State Howard, like the basketball player. Obviously, Deion Sanders' kids going to play for him, and a couple other kids that were higher rated kids going to play a couple of HBCUs. And so, because of that, for one of the reasons, they're going to be where the opportunities to get in a scholarship and get a school at. First of all, the smaller schools are going to be your bigger, they're going to be the big winners because the other schools are going to be maintaining scholarships because a lot of those guys are going to be coming back because of lack of playing time or not film or whatever. So it's gonna be a big deal for those schools, and so you'll start seeing a trend that way. And we're going to get ready to wrap this show up. But I do want to say this, since we already mentioned it, I do like the shot because I did watch this kid for 4 years, and I think he's a really good quarterback. He was a really good college quarterback over there at Wake Forest, and I think John Wolford is going to do a good job this weekend. He's from Bishop Kenny. He's going to do a good job, and the reason he stuck on is not because he can actually play the game, and he's a very, very knowledgeable quarterback. If he was 20 pounds heavier and maybe a half inch taller, he'd be a mainstay in the league. Would I say he'd be a starting quarterback? I won't say that, but he will not be bouncing and trying to get an opportunity. I think with the offense and with the coach that he had with McVay, he'll be able to solidify himself as a backup in the NFL after this week's performance going into the offseason. I think he'll be able to play a few more years in the NFL. Well, my friend, I'd like to tell you, first of all, it's been a pleasure for this year. I mean, we had some rough times for this year, but we stuck it through. So God bless you. God bless your family. God bless everybody else out there, our producers. Still, hey, Stephon Petty, love you, man. We need to get hooked up. But there's been a lot of Satira Bunch, all my folks in the Women's Tackle Football League, all my guys with laces out, all my customers, watch game film, She-Car, TSD. It's just been so many people, the people at UF Health, people behind the scenes that have looked at iHeart Studios, even though you had to, hey, they kind of still made sure that you got taken care of on the back end, like to shout out to Wakim Academy. Man, it's been one of those crazy years. North Florida Pumas, my God, I can't even Rod, all you guys, Angela, man. I mean, and here's another whole segment of people that I would thank just in this segment just for 2021, and I don't want to do any one person injustice by not mentioning their names. You know who you are, and we'd like to thank you. We'd like to say God bless you. Hopefully you, your families, our viewing audience, our fans, thank you. My sister, I know you're gonna hit me up. So all my nieces, my aunts, my kids, I know you go, hey, I appreciate you. I love you. I love everybody. I want this year, whatever you made it through, let it make you stronger. There's people we lost. I'm trying not to be emotional. There's people we lost. Remember them. Remember them by the way you live. I just want to tell everybody, God bless you. And I'll see you in 2021, right here on the Terry McGriff Show.